and we're back again with the Theotek Podcast, talking church video and photography tonight. We're really excited to have a full complement of our Theotek crew, plus one. Tonight we have with us a special guest. I'm not going to go and introduce the whole crew. You know who we are. There's Wes, there's Rick, there's La Rosa, there's Antoine. Just wave, guys.
And wait, call my name again so I can wave.
Yeah, there we go. And then we've also got a guest with us who's got some pretty good credentials in the church video world. This is Matt Fridg. Hello, Matt. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Hi there. Thanks so much for having me with you guys. Glad to be here.
Where are you coming to us from?
I'm just outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
All right, cool.
Wait, whoa. Are you a Penguins fan?
I'm not super into hockey, but I'm a huge Pirates fan.
All right, he's got to go or I got to go.
Okay, well, we'll see you later, Wes. Thanks for joining us.
See you later.
Good night, everybody. All the Philadelphians are leaving the house.
Uh-oh.
No, that's all right. Well, Matt is, we're really fortunate to have Matt with us. He's worked with some pretty big names in video, NFL, Fox, Miramax, among other things, and now he's got an organization called Church Video Coach. What's that?
Church Video Coach is sort of like a ministry, just my heart to be able to equip churches to do excellent video ministry and really to not so much on the live side, but on the content creation that could be for web, for YouTube, Facebook, ads, and sermon bumpers, just basic tools and training to help people grow in their video and production skills for the sake of spreading the gospel.
Cool, and that's at churchvideocoach.com that you can find him at. And so the reason that we invited Matt to come join us tonight is this article that he wrote for one of our favorites that we often mention here on Theotek, and that is the churchtechtoday.com. And he wrote an article saying why DSLR cameras fall short for church service video. I guess what you're talking about is streaming your worship service live over the internet. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, so any sermon or live application of a service, that's mainly what I deal with in that article, having really struggled with some of that, early on in the days of Real Player and Windows Media, all the way back then through now, but that's kind of what that deals with.
Okay, so you've been doing this for a little while with Real Player and others like it, yeah. Well, cool. So what would you say? What's the big hang-up with if a church has a nice DSLR that they've sunk a bunch of money into and they can figure out a way to connect it to their computer? What's the reason why that may not be the best solution, or what are the reasons why that may not be the best solution?
Well, I think I could break it down to its sort of elemental phase in that it's about design. If a church has a DSLR and they put a lot of money in it, believe me, I'm not saying throw that thing out and get something else. But if you're at a place where you're trying to decide, which way do I go in purchasing a camera, and your main focus is live video, a DSLR is not really intended for live video, and its design is, at its core, not really equipped to handle some of the rigors of live production. And so, really, that's what I'm trying to communicate to churches, that may only have a small budget, may only be able to purchase one camera. That this is it. This is all we get, and they're really looking to do video and live video. I just wanted them to have sort of another perspective on it, because they are so useful and they are so you can do a lot with them, but there are some downsides to it. I just would want people to be aware of when they make that decision.
Let's get more fundamental here, just in case there's somebody out there who's watching or listening that just doesn't. What do you mean by DSLR? It's a single lens reflect. What's the R stand? What is it?
Isn't it single lens reflex or reflector?
Reflex, yep.
Reflex.
And it's this kind of camera that I've got on screen right now. You know, it's got a big body you can hold on to, and you can take the lenses off and swap them out. Used to be they'd put film in these things, but now they're digitals with a digital sensor in them. And these things range from, you can get them for a few $100 to thousands of dollars now, right?
Yep.
And then the difference between that and the other kinds of cameras is the other kind, the camera, what's the difference between this and what you would suggest that you would use for video?
A camcorder, as it's often called, and we use that, sometimes we think of that term as, you know, like a older camera. The camcorder, as you can see the RCA on the second row there. But really a camcorder is a camera and a recorder sort of in one unit. It's designed for video. Its intent is to be shoulder mounted or held, you know, in a way that's better for keeping video steady. With a DSLR, the initial design of that way back into the, you know, the days of 35 millimeter was to take a still. You really you didn't have to keep it steady for long periods of time, and you didn't have to put any audio into it. And so now we're trying to ask still cameras to, and their ergonomics, to now perform as a video camera has, and the design of video cameras has, you know, moved forward in its design in great ways, and form factor and handles and viewfinders and all that kind of stuff, and that may not be found, and that's really not found on a DSLR. And a lot of what we do with a DSLR when we want to shoot video is we add a whole bunch of stuff to it to make it like a camcorder.
Yeah, why bother adding all that stuff to an already expensive camera when you could probably get a better solution for less than maybe even just the camera itself, let alone all the attachments that you have to do it. And you mentioned, one of the things I wanted to just highlight real quick, you mentioned audio issues.
Yes.
Talk about that. What do you mean by that? What's wrong with the audio out of a DSLR?
Well, one of the main issues with the DSLR is that they're not intended initially to record audio. So the inputs for audio are not the professional XLR inputs you might have on a camcorder. So first of all, the inputs, you have a 3.5 millimeter jack, or 1/8 inch jack that looks like a little headphone, and that's your microphone input. That's not so bad. There are adapters out there that you can adapt an XLR cable, which is kind of the professional microphone cable. You can adapt that to 3.5 millimeter, not a big issue. But a lot of DSLRs, and they have what's called automatic gain control, which means they like to mix the audio and the level for you, which is a terrible thing for professional sounding audio, because you want to have a lot of control over that. So to get around that, you have to have some device that actually sends a low-level signal into the camera to overwrite the gain control, or you have to hack the firmware, which could void your warranty. So again, workarounds that make recording audio, you know, difficult because it's not initially what it was designed to do. Even though it does do it, when we have used DSLRs on projects, we actually record separate audio on a separate recording device and then bring that together in the edit suite, which is just another step that could be very time preventative for a church that's just trying to get some live video out there.
Okay,
And if you're a professional, that's probably a good idea, but if most churches are not filled with professional videographers, and so especially if you're doing your live stream, you can't do that for a live stream. So Wes, you were going to say something?
Well, what comes down is the audio that comes in through a DSLR, even if you're using an external microphone, is incredibly noisy. Even when you have the gain turned down way down, and so you have to get a preamp passive, which is not powered, or active, which is powered, that, like Matt was saying, puts a low-level end down. Now, you can get around that if you feed it through your soundboard, because you can turn the gain way down on the soundboard, but all the other issues of the DSLR are still there. But audio off of DSLR preamp is just nasty sounding.
As an example of that, here's some video that I shot with a DSLR.
House where there was a decision made.
Well, this isn't actually as bad as I thought it was.
Part of that team would go back to House 3 where that decision was.
I remember it being a lot worse than that. The audio,
Well,
I mean.
wait until the lens autofocuses, and that's always a lot.
Well, it was stationary, so we didn't have that issue and such. But I just recorded that. We didn't stream that live, that audio. But anyway, so all right, so you can read the article. You know, he says lens issues, audio issues, recording issues, those kinds of things, and we're not going to regurgitate that article. You can read that. We'll have that at theotek.com. You can find the link to that Church Tech Today, or if you just go over to Church Tech to get today and look for it across the top, it's one of the more recent articles, so you'll probably find it. Just search for "Why DSLR Cameras Fall Short" is the title, or search for Matthew, M-A-T-T H-E-W-F-R-I-D-G, Matthew Fridg, and you'll find that there. But you give some recommendations here, and I'll show you this list. Talk to us about what would you use instead of a DSLR, and you give some recommendations down here.
Yeah, so there's the first one you see there, the Vixia GH20. Now that does not have XLR inputs on it, so I put an adapter on there as well, so that it has a 3.5 millimeter microphone input. However, it does not have the same gain control issues on it. So if you're looking just for like a nice little handy cam, good zoom, especially if you're doing live stream, anything like that, I'd recommend, you know, if you can, get a 20 power optical zoom. Like, just forget about the digital zoom altogether, but an optical zoom that's 20 powered or close to it, it's going to allow you to zoom in back of the auditorium or whatnot. The one I like that I have on that list, one is the Canon XA30, and the nice thing about it, and this is sort of the newer version, is it has a 20 power optical zoom. It is high definition. You know, you could go 4K, which is a higher resolution if you want, but I would just recommend getting a little bit beefier feature set than sacrificing that for super high resolution. But it does have XLR inputs. It has the ability to mix those, do line, mic, phantom power. Excuse me. It has I think I mentioned the 20 power optical zoom, but then you have the form factor of a actual camcorder. You have a rocker zoom on there, which is going to allow you to have more control over your zoom, and a whole bunch of features that you can read about. If you just follow that link, there's a whole list of specs, outputs that are going to help you take that right into a encoder or computer or whatnot very easily, because this was really designed to handle video, and input, output, all that is going to help you not have to do all those workarounds.
So these are the XLR inputs. Those are, if you've ever worked in a church and used the kind of mics that have the 3 prongs, that's what you're talking about, XLR inputs, right?
Exactly. That'll allow you to take like a line feed from your soundboard. It'll allow you to plug a microphone directly into it. It'll allow you a lot of options when it comes to putting audio into that camera, and then the audio processing system in the camera is going to be able to handle that signal a lot better and give you a lot more control. over the audio in there, which means just better sounding audio. And really, audio is like 90% of video, or I'm sure there's some cool statistic out there about that. But it's bad audio kills good video.
Okay, Rick, you had a question? You're muted, Rick.
You're muted.
Or at least we can't hear you.
I was muted on my microphone. If you have, Matt, if you have $1,000, say a church has a limited budget, can you get a decent camcorder with $1,000?
Absolutely. I think the Vixia GH20, the Canon Vixia GH20 is the one that I had there. And if you're looking to have those XLR inputs, then that's going to, if you get an adapter, that's going to put you right around $1,000 right there. But it's just a great little camera. It's I think it's around $699 right now. At B&H, it records on SD cards, which are super inexpensive. And you're going to get a lot of video per card. One thing we didn't mention about the DSLRs is some of their file management. Some of the older DSLRs will limit your size of your clip, so you could be in the middle and cut it off, or it'll create multiple clips, which could be difficult for some people in the Edit Suite. Stitching those together without any glitches and things like that, you have to have the right editor to bring that in all in one clip. So you bypass a lot of those issues. So I would say the Vixia G20 is a nice little camcorder that you're going to be able to do a lot with.
Okay.
That's Rick. That's basically what we have at my studio up at ABC&J.
Okay, gotcha.
And that's not a terrible price. That's cheaper than a lot of DSLRs you would buy with a decent zoom lens.
Well, I think it's $100 or $200 cheaper than when I bought it for. So.
Yeah. All right. What about dirt cheap? I mean, would you recommend? Are any of these at the super low end? You know, $200-300, or is that, if you're that low, do you just not bother?
It gets really tough at that point to. Yeah, I mean, it's just really tough as the technology is. It's not cheap, but I don't have that in front of me. I did a video on my website where I actually do put a whole matrix of cameras up, how to choose a camera. It's just three 5-minute videos where I take you through some of the ways to evaluate your needs, and then there's a matrix in there of I think under 500, and I go all the way up and even into above 10,000 for, you know, the very few that will even be close to that. But I give a wider view of cameras in that video series.
And that's right here on the main page, right? Is that's the one you're talking about?
Yeah, right on the main page there. Yep.
Well, that's great. I will definitely point people to this site. What do you think on the computer side? Then, what do you, just real quickly? How do you get these signals into the computer, and how do you get that out onto the internet? You don't have to go into specifics, but just for people to get an idea of what they would need.
There's different hardware out there. Theotek makes a nice little hot shoe mountable device that is Wi-Fi, and you can type in your live stream address right from it. So you could roam around, you could do all sorts of stuff like that. So that's one option if you know, you had a few bucks. The other option would be, you know, you can HDMI right into a laptop or a desktop and take that live signal and send it to your live stream program or software that you might be using, and whether you live on YouTube, live stream. I think churchstreaming.tv is another one as a service. I've talked to the guy who runs that, and I've looked into it a little bit, and they do Apple TV channel, Roku channel. So I mean, there's just some different services there that you can use to get that out there and get people looking at it.
Matt, how do you connect, or how would you recommend connecting a consumer HDMI camera to a computer?
The cool thing is so many computers now have HDMI inputs built in. That would definitely be one thing I'd look for if you're investing in a computer.
Mm-hmm.
If you have that ability, you can plug that straight into the computer. We used to do FireWire, but that's being phased out a lot in cameras and in computers. Mm-hmm. Some still do USB as a sort of a video data stream into the computer, but HDMI is really just such a solid way to get into a computer nowadays.
There's a Blackmagic box that will convert HDMI to either Thunderbolt or USB 3, depending on what model you get. So it's about $100, but
yeah,
because that's what a lot of people don't understand, is that a lot of times their HDMI ports are output only, and
yes,
they go to plug it in and they don't go, why isn't this working?
That's a really good point. Yep.
What do you think of the free services, the older ones like Livestream or Ustream, and then just recently Facebook turned on Facebook Live? What do you think about using those for church streaming, especially if it's a church, maybe a real small church, under 100 people, and they just don't have any cash on hand for anything? Right.
Livestream and Ustream, I mean, they've been incredible for people that I've talked with, and when you use a free service, you deal with ads. So I would say just do some research, look at what other people are doing on that free service, see what kind of ads pop up, if any. Obviously you wouldn't want an inappropriate ad or something that your church wouldn't really want to be associated with popping up on that. I think Facebook Live is an absolutely incredible development. I'm sort of afraid it's going to be overloaded with all sorts of riffraff, if you will. But I think that that's where people are. I mean, people are on Facebook already, and if you can get your content live onto Facebook, and then I think you're already reaching the audience where they are, and that's always a plus.
All right. Anybody else with questions?
Matt. I know you mentioned folks going into using a DSLR and the recommendations. The hardware side of your recommendations are really sound. But I know that many of the churches that I've been involved with, and I do a lot of mobile fun stuff.
Yeah.
They opt for the quick and simple because of the software tools that are along with it, and the if you will, how fast it takes for them to get from a piece of video to getting something live. When you move to a camcorder, a better camcorder, from a DSLR, you don't just have the hardware pickup, but you also have the software knowledge, getting refined in that. How would you describe some of the process or the things that a church has to learn when they say, okay, I'm going to put down that DSLR, I'm going to get a professional camcorder, what else do I need to learn? What would be some of that process for that?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think as you get into slightly higher quality cameras, oftentimes the bandwidth or the file sizes get larger because you have resolution, different compressions, things like that. So that would be one thing, making sure that what software you're using, you have the right plugins. For example, when you use Sony, any of the Sony NEX camera series, you have to download their plugin. It's just something that goes. You don't even use it; it just sits in the background. But it won't even recognize. It won't even recognize the card unless you have that. So. Whatever camera you're looking to get, if you're going to use an editing software like Final Cut X, Vegas, Camtasia, or my personal favorite is Premiere, because it can handle just about anything. It's just making sure the compatibility issues with the camera, the software, and so it's seamless. So there are some things, but that's similar with the DSLR, making sure that those things can handle the codecs and the compression, all those little things that sort of arise that one might overlook if you don't know to look.
Would you say, just from your experience in working with various churches and their AV teams, that it's pretty easy for folks to kind of get on board with better practices after moving to a camcorder, after having been on a DSLR, or do you see them having to kind of unlearn, bad habits and maybe even unpurchase some things rather than, because of what they were using previously?
Right. I think in some ways, the fact that you don't have to do certain workarounds is a freeing aspect. So, like you said, maybe unlearn certain things with a camcorder. They may come slightly easier. Excuse me, and you're not always worried about, like, for example, audio issues. Like when we would use DSLRs and do a separate audio, we'd have to bring it in to the edit suite. We'd have to line up the audio with the video, and that was a process. And when you use a camcorder, oftentimes you don't have to do that. It's one step out that an AV team might feel like they save some time, but yeah, I think that most of the people that are in AV teams, the guy or gal that are really excited about it, they're able to find the resources online. There's so much free stuff out there that you can research, look up tutorials, all sorts of things like that. And I mean, YouTube's got so many. So the information is out there to help. And then all these blogs and websites and things like that geared toward churches, I think, are even a fantastic resource.
This is becoming a big topic, and of course we've had a couple of other church video streaming experts on in the past, so our audience isn't new to this, but it sounds like, Matt, you've got a great deal of expertise in this area, and we really appreciate you coming and joining us about this. We want to make a little bit of a shift now, and talk a little bit about the photography side of it. And Wes is probably sort of our photography guru among us today. Wes, why would you use a photography, or how would you use photography in church other than, we're talking church streaming. You're not going to use it as much taking pictures of your church services, although that's possible. But what are the other more likely uses for church photography?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I started out doing video, and when I first got my DSLR, the video almost dropped. Photography captures things so much differently than video, which is one of the reasons why a DSLR is not great for video. And that's my thing is, if you're going to do mostly photography, you get a DSLR. If you're going to do mostly video, you get a camcorder. You do your photography on another device. But if you really want to capture freeze frames of moments and capture them well with a lot of detail and a lot of depth, and the heart you can convey in a really well taken photograph, even with a moderately powerful camera nowadays, is something that's really kind of cool. And so things like baptisms, special recognitions. I take pictures of things that are happening at church. So we just had our chili cook-off, and I did a bunch of pictures, and I actually did I used my DSLR and my iPhone as B-roll, and I just did a montage video. But things like that. The hard thing is that because of the way we take photography in our culture, which is the tourists are all out with the cameras and they're taking pictures, it's a lot easier to tell a videographer that when you're doing the videography, you're almost not part of the event. Because you're just a witness and you're one step back, and it's hard to convey that with someone who's doing photography, particularly for something like a baptism. People see themselves as part of the event, and we actually had this last year at our annual session. We had a baptism at the end in this hotel in this portable baptismal, and a bunch of people who were related to the people getting baptized all walked up and they blocked the view of 800 people behind them from being able to see, because they saw themselves as part of the event, and they didn't realize that as soon as you get the camera and you get in someone's face, you've now intruded into the event instead of actually acting as witness. And so at our church, even like particularly before I got the camera, now it's just I do it except when I'm in the tank. But we had a guy that had a DSLR and said, okay, here's your deal. You're photographing, or you're taking photographs during this worship service. And I'll give him a list. Get a close-up of the choir. Get a close-up of us taking communion. Get tight in on the ushers as they take the offering. Take people as they're greeting. Photography is really cool in that it shows life without motion. And that's one of the unique things about photography, and one of the cool things about the fact that everybody's going with these higher end cameras, because these don't have physical zoom anymore. We're getting more and more opportunities to see that happen, and so you want to have a target and know what you want to take. You need to assign people that actually take it and say, you need to take one for the team, and you're off on the side for this event. For when you're taking photographs, and then you need a workflow of how you're going to get these into a computer to process, and how you're going to share it. If you're going to put it up on Flickr, or 500 pixels, or even just Facebook and that sort of thing. And I'm rambling.
You use your photos as sermon illustrations too, right?
I do a lot of my sermon illustrations when I'm preaching are my own photography. Yeah.
Well, what's your workflow from I know I need one to here's how I use it?
Well, the cool thing, I have Lightroom, so now I have a catalog, so I just search oh, did I have signs? This last week I needed a one-way sign, and I just went sign. There it is, and I just grabbed it and threw it into my.
So you tag all your images as you're importing them so that you can easily find them later, or?
I tend to, yeah. I really started doing that a few years ago, and it's really paid off. I would definitely recommend doing that.
Okay.
And Lightroom, and I haven't used Photos, but I'm sure that it's capable as well.
All right. Do any of you other guys do this on occasion, and how do you get them? How do you get your photos in a state where you can reuse them over and over again?
Well, in my case, it's been a long time since I did AV. As a matter of fact, the church that I'm a part of now, when I was last at the church, I was a part of the AV team, and photography and video was part of my can of beans. We actually had a dedicated CMS that we used, and we encouraged.
What's the CMS?
Content management system.
Okay.
We had a custom one built because we had some really cool techies. And we, actually, along with the photography professionals that were serving, we were able to instigate our young adults ministry to also be contributors. And so they would get a group account, and the photographers would have their admin account, and we would basically send people like a gang mob at different events to go photograph items, and then based on what they uploaded to that CMS by a certain date and time, we were able to get those put into sermons, periodicals, our handouts. We would use those photographs for our welcome /offering letters. That CMS basically served as our photo dumping ground. There was some light tagging that went on. It's probably not used today. I mean, that was about 8-9 years ago. But that's kind of the way we worked.
Wes, do you ever find yourself saying, okay, I'm preaching on this, and I need an image, and then just go out and shoot it? Do you do that too?
Yep, and I've asked other people to take shots too.
Oh, that's cool. How do you do that? Just like through social network or email?
Media. I'll do that. I'll do that more with actually video clips.
Okay.
I'll text my friend. I need you to show me an example of greed. And it was, he took all of his gadget boxes, and he got his oldest son, and he took a video of his son reaching out to the thing, going, "My precious," and that was a clip in the sermon. But so reaching out to contacts on social media for stuff like that is perfect.
One of the things I love that for is it gets that person engaged in a way they wouldn't be in that sermon, and so they're looking for it.
Especially when they're in another state. That guy was in Minnesota.
Oh, okay, all right.
It's the other side of the country, and he's contributing to the sermon. But
yeah, well, that's neat too.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Any of you other guys do that, where you reach out to people and ask for their images, or no?
I did a documentary one time, and I somehow just stumbled across a guy in Cambodia. We were doing a missions thing for Cambodia, and he was an Australian, and he just said, "Hey, man, you can use all my photos," and he sent me a disc with like 1,000 high-res, amazing photos of Cambodia, and I mean, that was probably a rare incident, but I had basically free reign of those photos. So sometimes just asking, you never know. Some people are just excited to get their stuff out there.
And it's something that a lot of denominational mission boards need to learn how to do. I know in the next week I'm going to have to be working on getting information out of how we're raising funds for the relief of these earthquakes that have just happened. And up until now, it's never been part of our workflow to reach out to our missionaries who are in country and say, "Can you come on with us in Skype and let us record a conversation? What's the impact that you're having on? Can you bring some of your neighbors that have been impacted?" Not to exploit, but to make us aware that these are people. It's not just news event. There's a real human toll that's going on, and we're part of that relief because we're already there. That's just not something that's been part of our workflow, and we need to do more of that.
That's something I'm a part of the Southern Baptist Convention, and they're very good at using that for promotional material for their missions offerings and the missions agencies and for prayer support for those things. In fact, we just came out of what we call the Annie Armstrong Easter offering, which is a period of time where we collect money for missions here in the United States and Canada. And of course, every year I always download those videos or distribute pictures of the missionaries. They'll pick 8 missionaries, and they'll have a week, pray for one every day from Sunday through Sunday. And that's something that we do. And so locally here at our level, the Catawba River Baptist Association, which is our association of churches, we started doing that. And last year, one of the committees I'm a part of, we sponsored the flyer, and I went out and took a bunch of pictures just of different churches and their ministries, or asked them to send them to me. And I thought it was a more effective way of publicizing the ministry. Rick, you said you've done some work in that area of amateur church photography. What?
Yeah, let me. This is an idea probably some other folks can use too. One of the things that I do is I teach an adult Bible study class at my church, and years back I asked if I could have a projector, and I do some slides and keynote to go along with the lesson. But before we actually get going, as everyone's just kind of coming in, what do you want on that screen? Do you just want the title slide or what? And so what I came up with a few years back is to take pictures of participants in the Bible study when we've done things outside of the class. And so I have a slide or an album in photos on my iPad called Last 1,000 Bible study pictures, and I keep it pretty much to 1,000, and so like for instance this past Friday we had a get together at the park, and I took probably about 100 pictures, and there was another person there taking some pictures, and for this event I didn't actually have my other camera with me. I was just using my iPhone 6s Plus, which outdoors takes some pretty good pictures, and so I took about 100 pictures, took 3 or 4 videos. We were playing cornhole, so did some fun things with slow motion video and that kind of things. But the other person taking pictures, I asked her, I said, "Can you just airdrop me those pictures real quick that you took?" So I had all of those. I added about I think I cut them down to about 40 pictures and a couple of videos, put that in with the last 1,000, and then took out the oldest. But what I do is I play those before everyone gets there, and so there's 1,000 photos, but I have it in one of the I think it's the one called Magazine, the slideshow called Magazine, and I make it actually go pretty fast. So it's zipping in pictures pretty quick, and we probably get through the 1,000 pictures one or two times, every Sunday morning. But I think it's a real good way of kind of a bonding thing, because and I think it's good for visitors. When visitors come sit in, they see that we're actually doing things besides just sitting in a room reading and discussing. We go out and we do things too. So whether it's a mission project or it's some kind of get together or just whatever it is, we always take those pictures and we put that in there. And there've been some times I have to create these slides myself, and there's some weeks where I don't make enough time to do that, and so I would just not show the pictures, and I would have people say, hey, we missed the pictures. And so now this past Sunday I didn't have time to make this, or I shouldn't say I didn't have time, I didn't make time to put together the slides. And so but I still plugged in my iPad Pro and let those pictures rotate before we kind of got underway, and I let them run in the background even during even when we're doing announcements and those kinds of things, up until the time that I start teaching and I switch over to my keynote slides. And like I said, I've gotten really good response from that.
Yeah, we do that during VBS. I have my son who's a bit of a photography geek, and he'll take pictures each night, and then at the end of the night we have our closing. Most VBS, they have the opening ceremony. We have a closing ceremony, and that allows the parents to come pick up the kids, and all from one spot. But we'll throw those on the computer real quick and cycle them, and then the next night during the meal, I'll put them on the screen in the fellowship hall, and then he'll take pictures the second night, and we'll do it again. And it's a neat way to do it. And then the following Sunday morning, I pick 100 of the favorites and make a quick video out of it with some music, and we play it in our thank you time. So it's neat. Antoine, you had a sort of a church photography story you wanted to share?
Yeah, so I am the media marketing guy for the International Conference of Computing and Mission this year, for the U.S. version of this conference. And this conference is 26 years old, and for 25 of those 26 years, there has never been public photography. These are, yeah. So the interesting piece is that while we've taken photos at this this yearly gathering, these are missionaries who serve in IT, and they serve, a lot of them serve in extremely sensitive countries. And while we've taken photos at the conference when we come together, this is actually the first year that we will have a public showing of those photos. So we've what I did is I pulled together everybody who had photos. Mind you, this organization has been doing this for 25 years, and we really do have people that have these photos saved on tape, tape drives, and people who wanted to send me 2 gigabytes of photos and attachments, and I smiled nicely and said, if you do that, I will shoot you. So what I did is we actually have a Google Drive, a Google library set up, a Google album set up, and we're going to actually play the role of teaching guys who've been in missions in IT this year how photography has advanced over the years. We're going to let Google's AI basically play the role of putting the albums together and really tell the story of what computing in missions has looked like over the last 25 years, and it's really neat. We've got the best 80s dress and hairstyles that you can think of, all the way to Brohawks and iPhones. It's really neat. But photography for this endeavor, while it's been a knitting thing, this is the first year that it's going to be a publicly shared knitting thing. I think photography has a means of doing that, and it should be pretty powerful once Antoine updates the website to that.
Well, cool. Well, let's just around the horn. What cameras do you shoot, Wes?
I have a Nikon D7000 and my iPhone.
Which one do you use the most?
The Nikon.
Okay, so you haven't done like I have and jumped to your phone as the
No, and in fact, I tend to switch lenses depending on what mood I'm in that day too. So.
Yeah. Rick, what do you?
Besides the iPhone that I mentioned earlier, I've got this Canon PowerShot SX50HS, and I think the battery's dead on it. Or I would show you the lens. It's got a 50 power zoom. When I bought it, it was the most powerful. It's the Canon PowerShot SX50HS. If you're looking for that, but now I think they've got a 60 now. That's not it, the one you're showing there, but that's the one that we got to go to Panama because I needed something. I had a Canon Rebel DSLR, but I actually sold that and took that so that my wife we could easily switch in and out in pictures. Took some wonderful pictures of monkeys and capybaras and all kinds of wild tapirs, all kinds of wildlife down there. Anything that moved, I took a picture of. And and it's got such good image stabilization that video works really well on it too. We were in Panama for 8 days, and I took we took over 3,000 pictures and 5 hours of video just on that one camera.
Ooh.
Matt, I know you're mainly a video guy, but I bet you take some photos as well. What do you shoot? Do you shoot with your DSLR?
Yeah, I mean, I actually do a lot with my phone now, just because it's so fast, just to pull it out. But when I do some stuff with DSLR, I was using Canon 5D Mark II, and I really like that. It was very nice.
Okay, Antoine?
Using my phone or, this monstrosity.
You actually take pictures with your...
He's one of those people.
I'm one of those now. I was taking photos around DC on Easter with my iPad.
Believe it or not, it's not bad. I mean, it feels awkward and you feel like a real dweeb, but
the best viewfinder in the world.
You totally feel like a Chinese tourist.
And you got this huge image of what you're taking. It's beautiful.
Yeah, that's the best part of it.
Here. You can't miss the viewfinder.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Well, this is the camera I shoot with when I shoot just a camera, and that is a Sony NEX6. This is the 6B. I don't think I have mine as a 6B. I'm not really sure what the difference is, to be quite honest with you. But I love this camera. It's a really nice camera, and it's got interchangeable lenses, but it's real compact and small. I also have a Nikon D50-100, but I've pretty much given that to my son, he's kind of gotten into photography and doing his senior project in photography.
Kev, can I see the back of that again?
Yeah, let's see here.
So it has the viewfinder's at a rangefinder position. That's interesting.
Yeah, and I, for some reason, I just can't get the little, how you're supposed to have a pop-up when you, there we go, I finally got it.
There you go.
I'm not as smart as I think I am. Anyway, so there's the back end side of it. But last week I talked about my Ricoh Theta S, and I'm having a blast with this thing. And I've shot some stuff. For example, a senior banquet, not banquet, but luncheon, and that's me holding my phone because that's what controls the camera. And this thing is so much fun to shoot shots. And we took my son to North Greenville University, and so that just looks like a regular camera shot until you do this.
Well, we just need to put on a VR helmet. We can just go to church with you.
Yeah, and that's really cool. And of course, I just liked all the very Christ-honoring statues and monuments around North Greenville University campus. And of course, this is my church, and I like that. I think that just is a really cool picture, but then you can manipulate it and stuff. So that's actually what I'm shooting. But for photos, I take 90% of my photos now with either my Galaxy S7 Edge or my iPhone 6s Plus. And if I'm wanting a really great shot, I do with the S7 Edge. If I'm wanting to share it real quickly and easily, most of the apps for sharing are better on iOS, so I go with the S7.
But Kevin, I think that's what we all do. I mean, we might have a dedicated camera, but we have our phones with us at all times.
Yeah.
I don't have my camera with me at all times.
And you can take some really great photos in the right circumstances.
Yes.
You know what's interesting though? I use my phone. The camera I use mostly for video.
Well, I do some, but I mean, I use it for both almost exclusively.
That's even like I was doing this Chile event, and my still camera was my DSLR was my photograph, and when I wanted to take video, I was putting down the DSLR and holding up my iPhone and taking video with that.
And Rick, you've got this new camera coming for your China trip. Which one is it again?
Yeah. Let me share my screen here, and I'll show you. I've got this on order. Can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
Okay, I've got this on order. It's not out yet.
They still make those?
Yeah. This has a 35 power zoom lens, and it's got it takes 20 megapixel photos and 4K video. And so, you know, the reason I'm taking this, and I'll be in more than China this summer, is for accordance. I'll be in Hong Kong and Manila and Tokyo and Seoul over a month's period. And I wanted a camera that I could take with me, and I could have taken the Canon that I've got, but that either has to be in a bag on my shoulder or in a around my neck, and I wanted something I could just put in the side pocket of some cargo pants or something, which is what I can do with this. The other advantage of this is, if you see on my screen here now, you can use a smartphone with it. So you can use an iPhone or a Android phone. And with the iPhone, one thing that it'll do is, you know, when I get off the plane, it will automatically connect to my phone, and it will properly geotag the pictures. The photos can be automatically sent over Wi-Fi to either my phone or my iPad Pro. I'll probably use the iPad Pro for that. And so I look forward to taking some good pictures with this year, but I don't have it yet. It's supposed to be out by the end of the month.
What happens if you get that message saying, we've delayed the release of this camera for 2 more months?
Well, if that's the case, I'll take my other camera.
And all his iPhone photos are geotagged anyway.
Yeah, anything with the iPhone is, but like, you know, when I take pictures with this Canon, none of these are geotagged, right, unless I want to go in and manually do it.
I have an app for you that you can.
Yeah, I know there are some that you can manually do that with.
But there's one that's really cool. It's called I have to find it. You don't have to sync the cameras. You start a trip, and when you end the trip, it puts up a QR tag,
okay,
and you take a picture of the QR code with your camera, and you bring it into the desktop suite, and it automatically finds it and what it does is it syncs the geotagging information and calculates the offset and the clocks, and it puts them all up. Works brilliantly.
Well, if the Nikon doesn't come in time, I'll let you know.
You can, yeah, it works really well.
And that is Rick's favorite thing tonight. If you're a regular watcher or viewer or listener, then you know we always end with our favorite things, and it's getting close to that time we're about to end the show. Does anybody else have something they want to recommend as our favorite thing? Go ahead, Antoine. You're muted.
I'm a little bit different than most of the normal tech. So most of the tech that we usually do has some relevance back to something connected to an internet or photo or video. But I'm actually trying something a little bit new. I bought a fish this weekend, and I actually bought a fish with a kind of a complicated aquarium. I'm doing a little aquaponics. So I have a few wheatgrass and a few other things being planted in there. I got a little fish in there that's acting like he wants to stay alive. At least I haven't killed him just yet. But all of that's connected to.
But you got scissors to kill him if you need to.
I was about to say, what scissors?
So the next step is actually there's a water sensor that's in there that does the temperature and chlorine and all that other good fun stuff. But basically, I'm trying to do the whole plant your food, take care of your food, take care of your body kind of thing. And I thought aquaponics would be a nice way to go about that. It's something a little bit different than the norm, but it also gives me a chance, physically speaking, to actually watch another life feed me for a change, which is pretty cool. And
so you're going to eat it?
Yeah, lemon.
I won't eat the fish.
Lemon, butter, and garlic are great. Lemon, butter, and garlic are great.
On the goldfish?
Butter and garlic are awesome. I won't eat the fish. But
don't keep flipping it on the grill. Just let it stay there till it releases.
Dude, you always flip the
The
fish.
thing will be like a complete burnt offering in 3 seconds.
Oh, that is cool. Fish are somehow so relaxing. I don't know why. My wife used to have betas.
I never could get attached to fish. I tried. I've tried more than once, and you can't hug a fish. You know, I'd rather have a dog.
Well, I don't cry when they
No,
die.
this fish is really interesting. This fish has faked death twice now, so it's earned its keep.
Your fish played dead?
It has twice.
Maybe it's having strokes or something.
That's probably is. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Well, it's allergic to wheatgrass.
Matt, we kind of didn't warn you about this, or I don't know if we did or not, but you have anything you want to throw out as a recommendation here at the end?
Yeah, sure. Let me keep with the photography theme, and one photography website, I don't know if you guys have heard of him before, but Chase Jarvis is a photographer he does a lot of ad stuff and big magazine stuff, but he's kind of cool with his blog where he talks about all his equipment, how he backs stuff up, hard drives, his video series, all sorts of stuff.
Cool.
Just kind of an uber cool, maybe he's a little too cool for me, like I'm not cool enough for him, and I'm not like a surfer or whatnot, but just really helpful in just how he divulges his process on his blog, and yeah, so I just throw that out there.
All right, that's a good one. I think both Wes and I would maybe like to recommend this, a website that I've just recently come to enjoy called the Babylon Bee. If you're familiar with The Onion, you know, it's in secular fame. Well, this is a Christian version of The Onion, and this was one of the most recent ones that we were laughing about before we started the show. Congregation begging God to stop pastor from seeing any more movies, and it was really funny. He said when the Transformers movies rolled out, we had a sermon entitled "Being an Autobot in a Decepticon World," and so go follow the Babylon Bee on Amazon. What am I talking about? On Facebook or Twitter or those sorts of things. It's a real hoot. And of course, one of the most recent ones was Joel Osteen ordered to acquire a butcher's license due to exegetical methods. I'll let you decide whether that's offensive or funny, depending on your preference about Joel Osteen. We won't get into that here, but anyway, it's a funny blog. So, Wes, did you have anything different?
Yes, I'm going to go small. My favorite thing is the internet.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. On Sunday night, I was preaching at our Brazilian congregation, and I get over there before worship, and every one of them is huddled around a smartphone watching a Brazilian television station. And what they're watching was the impeachment vote of the president of Brazil. And it was absolutely amazing to be there with them on that night. But to see how, I mean, some of them have been in America for over a decade, but they're still attached to Brazil as home, and the fact that the internet's here and they can be watching as this very important event happens for their nation, and they're watching it live. And I thought that was really cool. I mean, we make fun of all the things that CNN does with social networking and all that all the time, but for them to be able to do that and to hear them make the same complaints about politicians that we make was really kind of cool. So, because they're supposed to get up and say yes or no, and they said, and every one of them's going, I'm doing this for my children. It's like, just say yes or no. I'm like, wow, that's just universal. So it was kind of cool. But it was a really neat time, and it reminded me of the power of the internet.
And where do we find the internet? Is that like a website, or is that?
Well, if you watch the IT Crowd, it's a little box with a blinking light on top.
Is that it?
They hide in the Big Ben.
When it doesn't work,
you've never seen the IT Crowd, that doesn't make any sense. But yep, that's it.
When it's not functioning, you just turn it off and on again, and that fixes it.
Turn it off and on again.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, guys. We've had a great time tonight, and of course, as we say at the end of every show, thank you for being with us, especially if you're still with us. And you can always watch on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube. Go to Theotek.com if you want to find that real easily, or just search for Theotek. That's Theotek. and you can also find us on Amazon. Why do I keep saying Amazon? On
You
Twitter.
really, is there something you want to buy? Is that what's
buy
going on?
everything on Amazon. You can search for us on Twitter and on Facebook. We have pages for both. We're Theotek Podcast on Twitter, and just go to theotek.com to find links. And if you're watching this, maybe you'd prefer to listen to it. That's fine too. You can get us on iTunes or on most podcast apps through Stitcher Radio. So that means on Android or on a Windows phone, and who knows, maybe even on a BlackBerry. I don't know if you could get us on a BlackBerry or not. I bet you could somehow, some way. But we thank you for doing this, and if you're ever interested in talking to us about a product that you create that's church-related or a Bible app, or you want to ask us a question, please hit us up. You can go to theotek.com or through our Twitter account and get a hold of us that way. We'd love to talk with you and interact with you. We do this every Tuesday night at 9 o'clock. And Matt, we just really want to thank you, brothers, for joining us tonight. It was great to have your expertise and your knowledge and your skill, and we probably could have talked to you for 4 hours about all that you know, and I bet you've probably forgotten more than any of us know about doing a video, especially in church. But thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a real blast.
Well, cool. And we're glad to have all of you with us, and this is the end of this week's Theotek Podcast, so thanks for joining us.
Good night.